Hi YouTube, my name is Jack, and today we're going to talk about the hardest part of keeping an oath of secrecy. So, for anyone who's stumbled in off the street, I belong to the Gardnerian tradition of Wicca, and a thing that you find in various streams of traditional Wicca, including Gardnerian Wicca, is an oath of secrecy. Traditional Wicca is an initiatory mystery cult bound by an oath of secrecy so that upon initiation, members take an oath that there are certain things they will not discuss with outsiders. I've talked about that in the past. And what I've been thinking about lately is what's challenging about keeping that oath of secrecy. I think that people sometimes have misconceptions about what's hard with that. There are some people who think, oh, it must be really hard because you'll just forget, you'll slip up, and you'll accidentally start talking about initiatory stuff in front of the wrong people. That really doesn't happen. I mean, maybe sometimes it might happen, somewhere, someone in the world. Sure, people slip up sometimes and say things that they shouldn't, but by and large, it's you know which topics of conversation you're just not going to bring up, and you're just not going to start talking to a non-initiate about what you did at your spring equinox ritual. It's just not going to come up. So that's not really the tricky part about keeping an oath of secrecy. There are other people who think that everything in traditional Wicca is already known to outsiders, and so the difficult part of keeping an oath of secrecy is pretending that there are still secrets to keep, which, okay, sure, um, hasn't been my experience, but there are a lot of people who seem to think that uh, the idea of initiatory secrecy is really rather silly, and that the hard part about it is basically pretending to take it seriously, because surely all of the information that is interesting and relevant is out there available for someone to find already without going through initiation, and so the hard part of the oath of secrecy would be pretending that the oath of secrecy matters. Has not been my experience. For me, overwhelmingly, the hardest part of keeping an oath of secrecy, and the thing that really and truly no one had prepared me for, is keeping my mouth shut when people are confidently wrong. Right? As an initiate of particularly Gardnerian Wicca, just because it's one of the more prominent and well-known traditions of initiatory Wicca, but as an initiate of an oath-bound tradition, I am often in situations where people who are not initiates are talking about my tradition as if they know shit, and they don't. And sometimes people are speculating, oh, I wonder if Gardnerians do X, Y, and Z. Sometimes people are making claims. Ah, yes, well, of course, everyone knows that Gardnerians do X, Y, and Z. Oh my goodness, you're so speedy. You're such a speedy little kitty cat. Oh, wow. Wow, I wish everyone knew how speedy you are. Pardon me. Um, but I am often in situations where people who are outside of my tradition are talking about it. And the hardest part of being an initiate and keeping that oath of secrecy for me is keeping my mouth shut when people say things that are way off base, and they say them with a great deal of confidence. Um, People like to throw out this idea of, oh, I neither confirm nor deny when someone says something, and Eh, sure, I guess. I think that saying, I will neither confirm nor deny, is a little stupid. You're better served by just keeping your mouth shut and not participating in a conversation. But regardless, I've had a lot of situations where people will try to talk either to me or around me about things that they are not a part of, as if they have knowledge of them. And refraining from correcting people when they're really off base is hard. It's hard to hear people say things that are really just totally wrong about your tradition, right? People do this for a variety of reasons. I think sometimes people want to show that they are in the know, right? They want to sort of feel like they have a kind of privileged status or affinity or a membership with the in-group, even if they're not officially in the in-group. They want to show that they're one of the cool kids, right? So sometimes people will like try to talk to me about things that they think are part of Gardnerian Wicca as a well-intentioned form of social signaling to be like, ah, yes, well, I know what you do, so I'm cool. So, like, even though I'm not a Gardnerian, like, we're good. Which doesn't have the effect that I think that they're hoping that it has. It kind of has a contrary effect. Um, Relatedly, you get it with seekers a lot, right? Seekers are often very earnest and very sincere, and they want to show that they're taking what they're doing seriously. They want to show that they have done their research or that they already know things about traditional Wicca or whatever the case may be, right? I've had a lot of cases in my seekers group or with people who were applying to the group where people have spoken to me about things that they think they know are part of Wicca, and sometimes they might be on base. A lot of the time, they're really far off base. But I can't engage with that, right? And it doesn't come from a malicious place. I think it often comes from a really sincere place of wanting to demonstrate earnestness. But it puts me in an awkward position, and we'll come back to that point in a moment. Sometimes people do this kind of thing, and I think maybe the intention is sometimes not so innocent, right? I think that sometimes people are trying to get confirmation of the secrets, or they're trying to catch the Gardnerians out in a lie. And let's put myself on do not disturb mode. I hope that noise wasn't too loud. Okay, there we go. Sometimes people are digging, right? And they're trying to say something and then see if you're going to confirm it and see how you're going to react. They're testing the waters to try to see what they can get out of you, and that's shitty, but it happens, right? People are going to do that. People are going to dig. But a lot of the time, I think it's not necessarily malicious. I think it is either a sincere attempt to demonstrate some kind of social signaling of earnestness or interest or membership in the in-group, or it's just genuinely that people think they know things that they don't actually know, and relatedly that people don't realize that things are inappropriate to talk about, right? There have been a number of situations where I'm around non-initiates who are either making claims about or speculating about the Gardnerian tradition, um, in a way that comes across to me as quite brazen and inappropriate. But I think that they probably don't realize how uncomfortable it is for me as an initiate to be in the room and listening to them talk about shit that they don't know, and having to keep my mouth shut about it. I don't think it comes from a malicious place, but I think often people who are doing that don't necessarily realize that they're putting the initiate in the room, initiate or initiates, in a really unpleasant and uncomfortable position. And people will say all kinds of things about Gardnerian Wicca. People will make all kinds of claims. I've seen it all, right? Occasionally, someone might make a claim that's accurate. Either, they have made a lucky guess, or they have just you applied some common sense and figured some things out, or they've been around someone who was an initiate and knew their shit and didn't know how to keep their fucking mouth shut. Occasionally, people will say something that is accurate. Also, very often, people will say things that are very inaccurate. And the problem is, I, as an initiate, have to respond to both of those things in the same way. And in life, I don't have a great poker face. With Wicca stuff, I really try. And largely the way that I try is I just don't engage in conversations, right? If people are asking questions about things that are inappropriate or that are, that I consider off limits, if that conversation is happening around me, I'm just not going to engage with it. if that conversation is addressed to me, by and large, I'm probably going to shut it down. And the thing that I'll typically say is like, I'm not going to talk about that. I at one point I had someone ask like, oh, are there any, secret incense recipes I can know? And I'm like, buddy, you know that if there are secret incense recipes, I'm not going to share them with a non-initiate. Come on. Come on. You know better than that. There might be, there might not be, but regardless, that's not a conversation that we're going to have. Um, and so, right, things like that. If a conversation is addressed to me, I will just disengage and say, like, look, I'm just not going to participate in this conversation. You know that this is touching on, that you're asking about things that it is not my place to speak about. And whether that is or is not a thing, I'm not going to tell you. We're just not going to talk about it. But other times there will be conversations that are happening in a space that I'm part of, either online or in person. And the best thing you can do is just, at least the best thing I've found that I can do, is just not engage. But it's really hard not to want to correct people. And there are certain things where, right, like there are certain things that I can and do correct people about. Really important things, right? Traditional Wicca never charges money. Traditional Wicca is never going to require you to have sex. Like those are very important things to kind of publicly broadcast and make sure that people are informed and on the lookout for like red flags and things like that. But if someone comes along and says whatever, like Gardnerians start every ritual by flapping their arms and quacking like ducks, even if it's a really bad misconception, even if it flies in the face of my understanding of the craft, like even if it's offensive and it portrays Wiccans in a really bad light, I gotta keep my mouth shut. And that is the hardest part about the Oath of Secrecy, is just letting people be wrong. Because a lot of people are wrong about a lot of things, but about Wicca in particular, right, like there are a lot of common instances where people are very, very wrong about what goes on in the tradition and so on. Like I had a conversation with one of my seekers not too long ago, where this particular seeker, whom I love and who is fantastic and wonderful, but this particular seeker just kind of offhandedly made a very confident claim about something that they thought was a part of the Gardnerian tradition, and it was incorrect. And oh boy, I wanted to correct them. But you gotta let people be wrong. You gotta let people be wrong, and you gotta be willing to be misunderstood. I think that especially kind of in the era of the internet, where our lives are so constantly surveilled and where we are broadcast to the world and under scrutiny for so many things, I think there is this real desire, this pressure to be understood. And there's this fear of being misunderstood. And if you are part of a secret cult, people are going to misunderstand you. People are going to misinterpret you. People are going to think and say and believe things about your religion that are wrong, and you have to be able to let them be wrong. And you have to be able to just keep your mouth shut, not engage, brush it off, and keep doing your thing. And that's something it took me a while to really grok, even after I had been initiated for a couple of years, because it's really, really hard to let go of that impulse to be understood. So, anyways, that's about all I've got. Thank you for watching. I will catch you sometime soon.